Hello? Hello, Kenny.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Hello, Kenny. So good
Hi,
to see you.
good to see you. Let me just,
I'm so happy to be talking to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making the time.
sure.
I'm so
Well,
excited.
where else
How
am
are you? How
I?
are you feeling today?
Everything is fine.
Yeah?
Everything is okay. It's not too
Good. Well, I don't think you need an introduction, but I'm going to do one anyway. I mean, you are a good and brave writer. You speak the truth. You're an artist, a curator. You have studied law. You know a lot about architecture. You did many collaborations with Zaha Hadid. That's the time when I met you back in 2008. You're also an art activist, a teacher. So basically, you have reinvented yourself more than Madonna, Kenny. Good for you. Is there anything in the art world that you haven't done and that you would like to do?
but I'm not quite sure. Just more of the same of what I'm doing. I'd like to be able to get to the point in society today where we can start to stage exhibitions again. I was about to have a show in Tokyo with Blum and Poe of my own art on March 13th, which has been indefinitely postponed, so that's annoying. And I would love to be able to do that. I was also meant to have an exhibition that I curated in Brussels um, at Mercier Marani Gallery and do a few more public talks. So I just would be grateful for things to get back on track to where they were before, where I was quite happy with the way things are going.
Okay, what do you enjoy doing the most? Being an artist, writing, what do you like the most?
I mean, I have to say I get the most satisfaction from writing and making work, but also teaching. And I've been, thank God that I've had this class at School of Visual Arts over the past 6 weeks. Unfortunately, it ends the semester comes to an end next week, but that's been a great kind of anchor to keep me focused and keep me thinking and working during this kind of tragic shutdown that we've all experienced.
Yeah, I teach as well, and it's so rewarding. I love teaching. I know you're in New York City. Are you managing the confinement on your own? Are you with your kids?
I'm with my, I was alone for about a month, and my kids, one of my kids was quarantined for 6 weeks, and he's now tested negative finally. So, and I've been with my
Good.
wife. So we're in New York City and with my family, their kids living outside of our apartment.
Okay. And how is the situation in New York? I've been locked down in the house with my twins for exactly 43 days now.
Well, I mean, I have
And
to say, from what you read in the press, you would think people are keeling over and dying on up and down Park Avenue and all over the city, and that people are banging to get into hospitals and unable to. But I have to say, I mean, I'm sure it's quite similar to everywhere else in the world. The streets are much quieter, but if you go to Central Park on any given sunny day, you would almost never know anything was ever different. And of course, like to get into a supermarket now is like going to a football match or a concert that you have to wait online often around the block. But I guess people more than ever just rely on ordering things online.
yeah, I see. I see. Um, I know this is a very general and complex question to answer, but what is your take on the aftermath of the confinement?
Well,
What do you think is going to be the situation like after?
I think this has been obviously the greatest drain on the global economy, probably in the last easily in 100 years, if not a lot more. So I think that it's going to take a lot more time than I, for one, initially thought, and I'm sure a lot of people. But I think there's going to be a lot of long-term economic retrenchment and suffering. Obviously, across the globe, there are so many people that are really fighting just to be able to feed their families. So it's a bit presumptuous and um, almost arrogant to talk about the art market per se in relationship to
Yeah.
worldwide suffering. But I think it's going to take a good long time, like at least 2 years. I think that we'll probably lose like maybe 40% possibly of all of the of commercial galleries worldwide. And it'll take a matter of years before things get back to where they were, which was a pretty historic high. So, I mean, I think that nobody's going to want to go to Basel in September or anywhere else for that matter, since there's rampant speculation about a resurgence of the virus in the fall and the winter. So, I mean, I don't think there's any art fair in the world that's really worth getting back on a plane and starting all over again to hit back on the treadmill. In a way, it's been like this kind of worldwide mental, economic, social, political retrenchment has been a positive thing for people to take stock of their lives and forge closer relationships with family, not with friends, since you're not allowed to meet anybody. But I just think being with yourself and spending time with just the issues at hand and what your priorities are, what our priorities are individually and more communally, will have positive knock-on effects. But it's going to take a few years for people to start spending freely on art the way they were in the past. I don't think by any means that things will come to a halt or that the market won't continue and people will make art as long as they're physically able to get out of bed in the morning. So things will go on, they always do, but it'll certainly be a lot different and a lot kind of constricted in relationship to how it's been in the recent past.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But for example, now auctions seem to be doing really well with their private sales, and you know that they have.
I don't know about really well. I don't think anyone is doing really well right now.
Well, you know, they seem to be doing a lot of private sales.
They're trying to.
You don't think that's true?
No. I think that the market is probably down 80% right now. 85%.
Okay.
Obvious.
Okay. Okay. But there's always been a big gap between primary market prices and secondary market prices. Do you think there's a possibility that with the current situation that you know, the art world community, meaning galleries, dealers, and auctions, will have a closer sense of sharing more or less the same prices?
Well, I think that there's been a total readjustment of prices, and I would say, generally speaking, for secondary artwork is probably 30% less than it was 6 weeks ago. That's safe to say. So in the primary market, I don't think, I mean, prices can't necessarily drop by similar percentages for primary work, but the biggest change in the primary market is, whereas before there was a tremendous hierarchy which defined access to work by coveted artists, now anyone who rocks up at a gallery with money in hand has access. So there's been a new definition and a new kind of notion of how to get access to work from some of the more upper tier, snootier galleries. And so I would say for primary work, prices are probably, whereas before it could have been 0 discount or 10% at best, now maybe it's up to 20%, but the work is being offered to a wider array of people. And in the secondary market, you could say there's across the board 30 to 50% discounts in relationship to the recent past.
Okay. So you think, you know, it's a good opportunity to buy now. Obviously, people are going to sell more and like be able to, you know, prices are going to be lower, and there's going to be a bigger negotiation margin. That's obvious. But in general, you don't think that there's going to be a price adjustment?
There has already been a price adjustment. Like I said, 30 to 50% in the secondary market, depending on material. And primary market, I don't think there's, I mean, if a young artist or a mid-career artist is selling at, let's say, $50,000, maybe you'll get that piece for, you know, 40,000 or 38,000. That's really, so I would, like I said, there's probably a difference of between 10 to 20% in the primary market. Mainly people that couldn't get access to works before now have full, anyone who has money has access today. So that's been a kind of great, the fact that no one has money and there's a diminished deal flow, that's been a great democratizing factor in the art market. Anyone who has money is allowed in the gates now, whereas before it used to be very exclusionary, much more than it is now.
Okay. Um, who do you think is going to suffer? I mean,
Me?
we're all suffering, obviously, but and it's very, there's so many people dying that it's, to be
Yeah.
talking about the art world is very superficial. I know, but
Well,
it's your business and it's my business, and I think the people that are listening to us today is, have a relation in the art world. So, who do you think is going to suffer more? In this economy, in this art economy, like dealers, galleries, artists,
everybody. Every,
auctions.
everybody is. No one that makes the only people that are selling things today are supermarkets and pharmacies. So everybody is suffering across the board. I mean, I owe money for art that I purchased, and I had to redirect that money for the time being to pay my rent for the next 6 months. Everyone is suffering. I mean, not to mention the human health toll and the fact of we haven't even, the scope of the illness and the death toll is going to escalate for some time in the near future, at least, until there are inroads made with vaccinations and treatments. But there's not a single person from the very top of the market, like Gagosian, down to the smallest practitioner, whether they're selling art, making art, curating art, work. There's just been an across the board bloodbath in museums, in galleries. No one's walked away unscathed, not one person. This is a very, like I said, it's a very equalizing occurrence in our world where everybody is affected, from the people at the top of the pyramid to the people at the bottom of the pyramid. There's no one that's gotten by without having ramifications and felt a negative impact from the situation.
I see. But, historically in other pandemics, pandemics in the past have been an important creativity moment for a lot of artists. So, do you think it's going to happen the same now? I mean, you know, um, artists, the artists that I've been talking to, they're working like crazy. So there's like a bust in their creativity,
Well,
and I think that's
I think, unfortunately, or whatever, we're going to be faced with Corona art for the next 4 hour lifetimes.
Corona
And
art.
if I see one more picture of an empty street in a city, I mean, it's getting cliched already. It's boring. And of course, I mean, I've made a whole host of different videos. I've written about this situation. I've made a lot of art myself about it. Even today, I posted another video of like chasing my tail because we've all been curtailed in our practice and whatever it is we do. So I think we're going to be stuck dealing with pandemic art for the. I mean, when there was people talk, there were recent articles that in the 1918 pandemic, where nearly anywhere between 50 and 100 million people died, there was very little art on this topic. But nowadays, when everybody is tuned in to the same 24/7 newscasts and Instagram stories, and you can't turn your head from one side to the other without being bombarded by yet another kind of story or newscast dealing with this subject. It would be refreshing to see a news about, somebody crossed the street and got across to the other side safely. But we're going to be having to deal with this type of stuff for decades. Hopefully it'll be from hindsight, and it'll be something that'll be well behind us at that point in 2 years or even a year. But this is something that isn't going to fade from anyone's imagination. And I could see my kids telling their grandchildren, I remember during the pandemic and I couldn't go to the restaurants. And I mean, it's just not something that anyone could have fathomed. And that's why I never read fiction, because the reality just can't be fathomed. And you just couldn't make something up from the tragedy of the World Trade Center to this situation. If it's just beyond the scope of imagination almost.
You're an artist yourself. Are you creating art now?
I'm doing lots of videos and two-dimensional work myself. I mean, I'm afraid I'm in the category of people making stuff about our current situation, because really, I mean, I've been in lockdown myself. I get out very little, unfortunately. I mean, I'm growing by the inches per week, getting fatter and fatter by lack of physical exercise. But I mean, it's really, all we deal with. I'm teaching a class at School of Visual Arts on Zoom. I have to deal with my students and do virtual studio visits. We're going to stage an Instagram exhibition next week because the poor kids have been robbed of their senior exhibition open to the public. So in a way, there's not, I mean, every single thing is affected in our lives from top to bottom. So there's really no way around it. And yeah, I guess I've been making stuff about this since the first day it happened.
Okay, that's good.
I'm not sure it even is terribly good, but I'm doing it.
Yes, it's good. I mean, I think artists should keep on producing these days and should inspire one another. You've talked a lot about having a good eye and what does it mean to have a good eye at the time to approach and understand art. What would you say is the common denominator to build a good art collection, if there's any?
I mean, first of all, I always say that one eye is not enough. You need to look with both eyes. So you need two good eyes. And the most important thing is just, well, by the way, you're only half your face is showing. So you may want to
Yeah, I
lower
have
the camera.
a lot of people telling me that, but I see myself completely. Is that okay?
Well, that's better. Anyway,
Okay.
so art is about passion, and art collecting is a slow burning process. And I hate all the bullshit that people say art is expensive. Art is not expensive, and it never is. Of course, you can always find expensive art, but I collect posters, limited edition prints, drawings. You can go to art school and buy art inexpensively when these schools reopen. You can go on Instagram and buy art for a few $100s right now as we're speaking. So a collection is just constructed piecemeal, slowly, organically over the course of a long period of time through love, really. And living with art, actually, there's been clinical studies that it prolongs your life. And there was, I mean, I mentioned it a million times, but looking, it's just like the harder you look, the harder you look, the more you look, the more you see. And collecting art is just about finding things that you care about, that you love and you want to shepherd for the rest of your life or however long you live with it. And really, it's a responsibility to be a caretaker for work, to make sure that nothing happens to it during the course of your lifetime. But anyone can own art inexpensively, and all you need to do is to jump in and just take your time and don't listen to what everyone says, but find things that are meaningful to yourself for whatever reason.
Okay. What do you think is the best advice or the best way, let's say, to navigate the art world? What is the best advice you would give?
There's a lot of hypocrisy in the art world, and it drives me nuts. And I would say it's probably the single most driving force in my career is combating, or at least like pulling the curtains back on some of the awful behavior and bad behavior. And there's a lot of disingenuous people that have the wrong motivations for their activities that could be a big turnoff. And a lot of the mentalities of the galleries and the staff could be very off-putting and very demeaning or disheartening to someone who's interested in learning more about art and walking into a gallery and trying to get an ear, trying to get an audience and to speak about the art. Nobody wants to speak about art. They just want to find out who the next buyer is. So really the most important thing is to find your own pace, do it at your own speed. I mean, it's very difficult to find people you can trust and forge a community with, but they're out there, they exist. So the most important thing is just not to be daunted, to persevere, to be diligent, do your homework, read as much as you can, see as much as you can, look on Instagram all the time where you can find countless great resources, and just do it, make it a personal approach. Don't be kowtowed by bad behavior from people in the business. Don't listen to everything you hear. Just look and develop, educate yourself. It's a slow process of education, really.
Yeah, it's a long-term process. I think it takes a long time. It's not something that you can learn in a short period. I know you're a big fan of Instagram, and I think Instagram is a great platform for the art world. But do you recommend, besides Instagram, any other websites or any other platforms?
I mean, it's funny because I write for ArtNet. I've written for Art News, for our newspaper, recently for New York Magazine, and I just don't think that, I don't think there's a single platform, including the one I write for now, for art that is good or helpful or beneficial in any which way. I just think Instagram for now, I love the fact that it's an art platform by default, that it never set out to be an art platform. But the point is, yeah, I think that you need to scour all the websites to get information. There's a great website called artsjournal.com, and they cull newspapers and magazines from all over the world, tracking contemporary art articles. But I don't think any of the websites are particularly helpful or even that great a resource. I'll get in trouble for saying this, as I often get in trouble. But I just don't think there's a single website besides Instagram where you can see as much as you can in as quick as possible a time without it being, without galleries sort of controlling what gets seen and what doesn't get seen. So really, I don't think there's a single site. I'm not even sure in 5 years from now, any of these other website platforms may even be in existence, to be honest. I don't really even see, I don't see the business model or the commercial viability of any art website.
Really, not even with the days that we're living, that we're all becoming more virtual and more robotic in a way?
Well,
you don't think?
No, I don't. I mean, people are using Instagram more, and I used to use Facebook a lot, but I got into an argument for about 2 years with Matthew Collins, the writer from the UK, and I just got exhausted. But no, I think people are visiting galleries, obviously, in their websites, just because there's no other opportunity to see art. But other than that, it's either Instagram or nothing, really. So I think the galleries are putting a hell of a lot more resources into their websites than they ever would have done in history. So that's growing.
Yeah, they need to do that, obviously.
Yeah.
They need to do that. Who do you think, can you name me a collector that you think is relevant?
Collector. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not really a person that spends a lot of time thinking or engaging with private collectors. I've always really, I complain a lot about art dealers because I think so many of them are so capricious and so difficult. But I have to say that my relationships are more with art dealers because art dealers are in a tough position, especially the small to medium ones now, more than they've ever been in history. And I just find that nobody cares about art besides artists more, or nobody takes more of a leap of faith and makes like a dedication and a sacrifice to art than art dealers. And I love art dealers because I can't, like I've said it a billion times, I don't want to bore everybody, but I can't sell crack to a crackhead, and I don't want to. My goal in life is not to try to explain a piece of art and to help somebody decide whether or not they should own it. I'm just incapable of that, and more than that, I don't have the desire to do it, really. I love to educate people, and I love to share the artists that are meaningful to me, like Paul Thek, Thek, the American artist, or Vito Acconci, artists that don't necessarily have great commercial resale markets, but artists that are very important to me for whatever reason. So, I mean, there are great dealers from every jurisdiction.
And who do you think are the relevant dealers?
Well, I mean, relevant is such a strange word. I mean, there are dealers that do good jobs. I mean, Green Naftali is a good gallery in New York, and Magenta Plains, and there's so many different small galleries. Essex Street is a good gallery. There's a lot of dedicated people that are, I mean, in the older school or galleries that have been around for more than a few decades, like 303 Gallery, Blum and Poe, where I'm showing, have been around for ages, and they're dedicated to what they do. I mean, there's literally hundreds of them. There's so many great galleries that are doing a great job, and they're going to need support more than ever right now. So I'm really, to be honest, I mean, I don't need to be dismissive because I really need to make a living now more than ever. But I don't care about collectors at all. I mean, I think that people buying art obviously is what we're all reliant upon to make a living. The fact is, I just don't even know if a collector even exists anymore, because I can't think of one collector, quote unquote, that hasn't sold a piece of art in the last 1 or 2 years. And most collectors that you would traditionally call collectors are better art dealers than I am or could ever be. Not that I want to be one. But I don't think that collectors, for the most part, in the traditional way of nurturing careers, building collections, and then passing them on to subsequent generations, those people belong in a museum of natural history in a vitrine. They don't really exist anymore.
Okay. Larry G or David C, who do you like better?
I like Larry Gagosian because he didn't have a family in the business. He's self-made, and I mean, I think he's ruthless. I'm not going to say he isn't, but what he's done, history will favor him in a way and look back upon some of the extraordinary historic exhibitions he did that museums today don't have the resources to stage. And unfortunately, I'm pretty much generally against private museums in the way that they suck away resources from public institutions.
Okay, what about Deutsch and Ropak, for example?
I'm sorry?
Deutsch, Jeffrey Deitch, or Tadeo Ropak.
Who is that?
They're very different. So
Jeffrey Deitch or who?
Tadeo Ropak.
Well, Tadeus is a great guy. He started very humbly by he was working briefly for Joseph Beuys, and then he, at a very early age, left Joseph Beuys. Joseph Beuys wrote him an introduction to meet Andy Warhol on a napkin, and then Tadeus, when he was around 20, 21 years old, came to New York, bright-eyed, and had this napkin with a note of introduction to Warhol, and that's how he met Warhol. So he's a really beautiful person who's done things in a very kind of, a very serious way with a long view. So, and Jeffrey Deitch the same. I mean, I've known Jeffrey for a million years, and I have this story, which I don't know if any of you have ever heard, and again, I don't want to keep boring people to death, but one night in the middle of the summer, maybe 15 years ago or more, I wanted to leave a message on Jeffrey's answering machine in the middle of the summer, and I called him up at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night in the dead days of summer, and he answered the phone in his little office, working away. So I just think like people like Jeffrey and Tadeus and Larry and David and all of these people, whether you like them or not, art is their lives. And I mean, I think it's more heroic what the smaller galleries do that really have to make a struggle from day to day and from month to month, not to mention year to year. But I think anybody in this business, whether they're buying and selling or big galleries, small galleries, medium galleries, they all deserve credit because, I mean, before this happened, it wasn't the easiest job in the world. Whether you're, I mean, I hustle and struggle to get by all the time, and now it's going to be a lot more difficult. But all of these people deserve accolades in some way because there's a lot of easier ways to make a living than in our world. People think it's so glamorous and there's money pouring all over the place.
It's so difficult.
It's certainly grown more in the past 25 years until this happened than the previous 250 years, but it's a struggle for everybody, and it's going to get worse in the short term, really worse for everybody, including the big people that have overextended themselves so much. And in a way, I'm glad that we're going to be in a period of retrenchment on a certain level because, you know, like I made this video of myself chasing my tail today, but we're all just like on this treadmill and it gets boring after a while. Every 2 to 3 weeks for 10 years, I've been at the airport running from one stupid event to the other. And I mean, besides the bed sores and the lack of exercise, there's something to be said for just sitting around and thinking and spending more time just thinking about why rather than when.
Yeah. But I don't really think that art forms are going to die completely.
No.
I mean, I think there's going to be just very few of them that will survive. But, well, you know, we're still going to have art forms. We're still going to travel, not as much, obviously, but...
In 3 or 4 years, we're going to be exactly back where we started. On the
you think so?
Yeah.
I don't think so, Kenny. I don't think we're going to go back to where we started, like you said. No. I don't think so.
The second Basel is open in full swing. The second there's a vaccine to protect against the virus. The second people feel safe, they're just going to... I mean, it's human nature to get out there, spread your wares, like on a blanket, like in St. Mark's Street, and sell stuff from your house. The second people feel safe, commercial activity is going to accelerate like there's no tomorrow. It'll happen. It always does. I know when you're in the middle of things and you're sitting in your house locked in, you think that things will never be the same and that there are these changes afoot that are so deep and deeply entrenched. But I think sooner or later we'll be back to where we started. In the short term, in the next, like, let's say, even 1 to 3 years, people will travel less. But sooner or later, people will travel as much as they ever did. It's human nature to move around. We're in a very interdependent global society with a lot of interconnections worldwide, and that's not going to stop. It's slowed and it's impeded, but it won't stop.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
We'll see.
Let's hope you're right. Let's hope you're right.
Yeah.
So besides yourself, uh, can you name me a few artists that you think are very good and are relevant?
Well, I mean, I'm not a soothsayer, and I don't like to just pick artists out of a hat. I mention artists that are meaningful to me, like Paul Tech and Vito Acconci, and they're two deceased artists, but they're two deceased artists with very little market and very little public attention or support, even after.
What about young emerging artists or contemporary artists?
Well, I mean, there's so many great artists. It's really hard for me to, I mean, there's an artist like Catherine Bradford who's in her 70s, and she's an emerging artist. So an emerging artist is not necessarily a young artist. There's so many good artists today that I just can't sit here and pull names out of a hat. I'm a maximalist, and I love to collect a lot of art, surround myself with art, and there's so many things to this day that I continue to support in any which way I can. Although now I'm at a standstill financially, but I mean, I can't give a laundry list of artists. There are just so many, so many. Abeko Muslimova is one that comes to mind, who shows with Magenta Plain. She's a fantastic draftsman and has been making paintings over the last couple of years that are quite extraordinary, and whose work I'm very much attracted to.
Okay. And any advice to artists during this time?
Just don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, and use Instagram.
I agree with you. Keep on producing. Keep on producing. Absolutely.
I mean, it's a cliche to go to Instagram, but I told one artist, asked me just such a question, to give them advice. And again, like, I don't really have any advice other than to say, I told this artist, just put as much work as you can on Instagram and reach out to as many people. Instagram is the most democratizing platform that I've seen in 30 years in the art business. And don't be embarrassed or shy about just bombarding Instagram with your work, and then reach out to people. I've reached out to extraordinary people and found myself having audiences and relationships with people I never would have had, because you could just DM somebody. Don't be shy about reaching out to people. I always say again and again that any single person that asks me for advice, I get back to every single person, every DM, every email. I answer myself conscientiously, and I try to help in any way. I've been doing this for 30 years. I feel very lucky to be in a position where I can do what I really care about. And I feel I'm compelled, and it's almost my obligation, to give as much as I could to anyone who really cares. I mean, I think if I do one more live broadcast, no one will ever listen to anything I have to say again for the rest of my life, because it's just enough. I should give it a rest for a while. But anyone who has any questions, if there's any way I can help, I will.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let me ask you something. Do you think galleries are that important for artists? Or you think that artists can work and be successful without galleries?
No, I think art galleries are integral to the system because they offer rooms to see art. And right now, it's like, I've never been in a situation where thank God I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by a living place that's just, I'll do a spin around my office before we go, but I'm just surrounded by stuff. And I made a piece where, if it was illegal to go outside for another year and you weren't able to see art, it would be like in the Soviet Union or in China, where artists would have to take matters into their own hands and subvert the law and open like speakeasies and illegal venues in which to see art. And I think that it's a big deprivation not to be able to go to museums and not to go to galleries. So artists need galleries, and galleries are beautiful institutions that are free. It's the only free lunch in the world to see art, and you need nothing in a billion years will ever replace rubbing your nose up against a drawing or a painting or a sculpture or whatever. So, I mean, galleries play an intrinsic role in offering these free venues in which to interact with art. And we need to get back to that position. Slowly, things are opening in Europe and Asia, thank God, where you're allowed to go to galleries now without ramming into it. And I mean, there's something to be said for these situations where it's almost better to go see a show in a museum where you're forced to only go with a small amount of people because you'll be able to see the art better and to spend more time with the work if these visits aren't timed. So nothing will ever replace seeing art, not Instagram, not anything else. Galleries could never be replaced. There's always going to be a room dedicated towards seeing art where there's no institutional support or no other support. So yeah, galleries will come back sooner than later, and we will be going to them again soon, I hope.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you. Galleries are very important. Galleries are key. So I hope we'll be able to go back to them soon, and I hope that a lot of them manage to survive this crisis. Do you have a favorite museum?
Again, like, I mean, asking about museums is the same. I'm sorry that I'm not giving you a laundry list of names of artists and museums, but I live not so far from Museum of Modern Art, the Metropolitan Museum. The new museum is a fabulous museum.
Yeah.
Any focused museum is a great museum, you know. Like I said, I would much prefer public institutions and private museums. I have this kind of philosophical peeve against private museums because I just think unless they're in remote, inaccessible areas, that they have, in a zero-sum way, they take away the audience for public institutions that have painstakingly built up audiences over generations. So I love museums.
Any favorite museum in Europe?
I mean, I love Tate Britain, even as in relationship to Tate Modern, where I lived for 15 years in the UK in London. I just love the intimacy of Tate Britain, and I love the expansive nature of the collection that goes from more traditional historic art up to the most contemporary material. So I think Tate Britain is one of my favorite institutions in the world. I spent so much time there, just really being able to flip from one, like the Metropolitan Museum, but in a much more user-friendly scale.
What do you like better, London or New York?
Well, I love New York so much more, I have to say. I mean, I think London was really...
Me too.
I mean, London is a great city, and again, it's stupid to pit one against the other in a way. But when I was in London for the first 10 years, I was in heaven, and I had the best time. You're 1.5 to 2 hours away from any other European destination. The accessibility of these other countries are so close in relationship to being isolated in the United States. But I have to say there's been a great deterioration in the UK socially, politically, and economically in the last 5 years. Well before Brexit, there was a great deterioration, not to mention the crime is rampant in London. I felt tremendously more unsafe on a day-to-day basis in London than in New York. And in fact, I was robbed at knife point. My house was broken into repeatedly. My exhibition space, when I ran a kind of project space, was broken into, and a computer wrenched out of the hand of my gallery assistant. My cards have been broken into. And knock on wood, in New York, nothing ever happens like that. And I really wouldn't even expect it, nor do I fear it. So I just think in terms of the ease of seeing galleries, New York is an art fair every day. And when the galleries are open, there's literally 500 of them within a 3-mile radius. So, I mean, in London, it would take me 2 hours to go to one gallery and back, literally. So I just, I have to say, just also there's just a lot more public support for the arts in general, charitably in New York and the US than there is in the UK.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Well, Kenny, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Let me see if there are any relevant questions.
Moment of silence.
How did galleries survive in the Great Depression? I mean, I think a lot of galleries survived from the Great Depression.
There weren't, I mean, there really were so few galleries in the 20s. Really, the advent of contemporary galleries as we know them today didn't, well, I mean, they started, I guess, at the turn of the century, but there must have been in New York City, there was no Good Gallery. There was, let's see, Art of this Century, when Peggy Guggenheim didn't open until the 40s. There was 291 Gallery, the Photography Gallery. There was so, I mean, there were literally in the late 20s and early 30s, Edith Halpern may have had her gallery open then. There were no more than like literally 6 galleries then. Peggy Guggenheim's gallery didn't open until early 40s. So I think that 2008 was a period of a lot of kind of a setback commercially, obviously, but it was nothing compared to the early 90s, where I personally witnessed like 300 galleries going out of business in Soho alone. So I think there's never been a test in the contemporary art world to the extent that we're experiencing right now. And we're not going to see the fallout for between now and 2 years, what's going to happen. But like I said, I mean, I can see a period where maybe 30% of the galleries in the world showcasing emerging artists, young and old, will go out of business. Nevertheless, in 5 years or 3 years, or let's say in 5 years, there'll be more galleries than ever before, I would venture to say. Because that was definitely the trend we were going in historically, was that there was a kind of meteoric linear rise of artists, galleries, people writing about art, buying art, looking at art, all being interconnected through technology, whereas it's much easier to disseminate visual information over the internet today than it ever was. And that was really breeding a much larger audience for art and a much larger art world, almost on a year-to-year basis. And I think that will be set back now, as every sector of the economy will be. But once things get back to some degree of normality, and it's bound to happen sooner or later, things will just really charge ahead.
Okay. Well, I hope you're true, you know, and I hope you're right. I don't know. I'm not so sure that things are going to go back to normal and that in 5 years from now, we're going to have even more galleries. I'm not so sure about that.
I am.
But I hope you're right, actually, and I hope I'm wrong. Kenny, make time to produce your own art right now, besides teaching and writing for ArtNet, okay? Keep on getting inspired, because, you know, we're all going to be expecting your show at Bloom and Poe, okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be in touch, and we should do another one, okay?
Pleasure.
Big kiss from Madrid.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.